Hi, I'm Stacie.
And I'm Kristi.
Welcome back to Art After Dark. Today, we're talking about the emotional whiplash of being a creative. The highs, the lows, why they hit so hard, and what to do when you find yourself stuck in the valley. Let's get into it.
Let's go. Art After Dark, Season 2, Episode 7? I think we're on 7.
This must be 7. Yeah.
Today, we are going to talk about the emotional whiplash of being a creative. I mean,
Boy, oh boy. There's a lot of the whiplash.
I sort of think of it as, and we were talking about this before we started recording, like the highs and lows of being a creative and how I feel like it's like peaks and valleys and how I'm like a valley girl. I just hang out in the valleys. For better or worse, that's sort of where I find myself. But
Yeah.
can you think of like maybe one of the most recent times where you sort of felt this whiplash happening in your business?
I mean, this wasn't incredibly recent. It was, over a year ago, but it felt like a big low after a really big high. So I think it's a really good example. So we've talked about this before. I did some live workshops at Craftication, not this most recent one, but the previous year. So 2025. And, I was really excited to do it. And part of the process of getting accepted into Craftication is they offer you a spot in their like pop-up store. And so they let you put product in there and like, there's lots of crafty people there. And so I, took a risk and thought I'm going to make something just for this, like something that's very specific to this audience. So I made a notebook that said she's crafty across the front because who doesn't love the Beastie Boys? and
It's so
and
cute.
I had all these like craft illustrations on the front. And there was also a problem that happened with these where I ordered them. The minimum order was 50. And I was like, okay, I'm going to order 50. They arrived. And then a week later, 50 more arrived. And I was like, oh no, um, did you charge me for these? And then they basically said, my manufacturer was like, oh, that was a mistake. If you don't want them, you can return them to us. And I was like, well, what will you do with them? And they didn't really answer me, which made me feel like, oh, I better buy these because it's weird. So now I have 100
Yeah.
She's Crafty notebooks. And so I had my blog printing classes. They went amazing. Before I started, I like dropped off all of my product, put it in the store. Before I taught, I walked through the store and saw it in there and it was all exciting. And at the end of Craftication, they send you like a spreadsheet of, here's what sold, here's what we're going to pay you. And I sold
Mm,
one of these now 100
mm.
notebooks that I had made specifically for that event. So it was like this high of like getting to do this big event that I really wanted to do, making this thing that I really loved and that I had never made something like that before. So it was even more exciting, to get it in real life. And then the excitement of seeing it in the pop up with everybody else. And then, weeks later, getting that email that was like, you sold one notebook. I was just like, oh,
Yeah, that's tough. That's really
it was
tough.
tough.
Those
Yeah.
notebooks are super cute, by the way, and shame on
The,
those
I have
attendees.
since I have since sold every single one of them.
Oh,
So,
see?
that's a high. That's like, we got a high and a low and then a high. It took a while to get to the second high, but we did get there.
You're ending on a high note.
Yeah.
I mean, mine is a little bit similar in that the high would be, well, this sort of creative whiplash. Um, you sign your first licensing agreement. I mean, I was so excited when I got that email. I saw it at like 6 in the morning. I jumped on the bed and woke up my husband. it was like, oh my God, I got this licensing agreement with this company. It was my first choice. It was like high, 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 high. And then I got my first payout, which because it was my first payout, of course, it was a high in itself, but like the amount was pretty low. So that was like not great. And I've talked about that on this podcast. Um, and then I got my second payout, which was under $2. Wild, wild. It really does make you wonder, like, what is it all for? Stay tuned for that. Coming in the next in another episode. And so yeah, that was definitely, and then I got another payout, which was like $200. Still not like a lot, but
Not quit your job money.
not quit your job money, but still, okay, like that's encouraging. Not
Yeah.
going to change my life, but definitely change my bank account. So,
Mm-hmm.
so it's this concept of emotional whiplash, which is this like jarring switch between, this sort of creative high and then like a bit of a creative hangover that is a dip in your mood. And, you know, a lot of it comes because we care so much.
Yeah.
And we're juggling, as people who have full-time jobs, we're juggling a lot of different hats. And so these highs and lows can come quite frequently as we switch gears, even from like our regular job to our creative job. It's a lot. I think it's something that a lot of artists experience. Um,
Oh, absolutely.
so yeah, and I did a little bit of research on this. And when I say research, I mean low key. We're not researchers. We're just curious. Um, One of the things that came up was this idea of the vulnerability loop, is what they call it. And
Mm.
basically, it's this high that you get from finishing a piece or launching a product or getting the email that's good news. And, you know, all these new subscribers to your email list. Like I got an insane number of new subscribers from the Sketchbook Revival, which was
Mm-hmm.
like it was thrilling every time I would wake up in the morning and see like new subscribers. Also terrifying, like how to talk to these new people. Um, so yeah, so it's this idea that you create this piece, you do something new, you're super excited, and then you also just sort of put it out in the world and you're waiting to be judged. And you have no idea how it's going to be received. And maybe it's not received in the same way that you had hoped. So then you kind of come back down. And it's just this
Yeah.
cycle. I don't know if
Yeah.
you have any thoughts on that.
No, I think it's just really real. But I think it's of course we're talking about creative work, right? And how this I think this just happens in everybody's life in all aspects, right? Like we all have high expectations for something and they don't always pan out. Um, but it can feel really heightened, right? By especially if you're really trying hard to make this to transition from like having a full-time job to having an art business that fully supports you. I know that people will feel it's really intense, right? All those feelings that you need to get there and you need to get there quickly. And so when you have those lows, they feel even lower in some instances.
Yeah, definitely. Because you don't have as much time. It's not you're not dedicating yourself fully to making this a business or making it a success so that you can quit your day job. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so you feel the highs and lows, I think, more acutely. I
Definitely.
know also, I think we've talked about this idea with it's out there on the internet. You can Google it. The Ira Glass,
Oh
um,
yeah.
the idea of the taste gap. So this
Mm-hmm.
idea of I know what I want to make in my mind. I see what it should look like, but my skills aren't quite there yet. So there's this distance between where you are and where you want to be. And when you are making work in the margins and you have less time, there's a lot of pressure to like close that gap. And so you're
Mm-hmm.
constantly like trying to put yourself out there and share your work and publish create products, create classes, create whatever. And it's just this constant back and forth and whiplash. I mean, I don't know that there is a better word than that. Between like the excitement of finishing something and then like the emptiness after it's done and then starting it again and then it's over, and it's just a lot.
Yeah, definitely a lot. Um, okay, so we've talked about like those highs, that we're kind of building maybe while we're in the air even, like we're building up to that high. But sometimes, like recently I had an emotional whiplash moment that was more of an opportunity that I had to decline. So I got a really nice, like out of the blue email from this woman who owns an art store up in Northern California. And she invited me to come out and teach block printing in her store. And on the surface, like I had like two reactions at once when I got this email. I was like, oh, that's really nice. What a great opportunity. I don't want to do that. So, um, and also I had this thought that was like, I know there are great printmakers in Northern California who could easily do this, and like they live down the street, and there's no reason for me to like drive up there from LA to go and
Yeah.
teach this class. So it was like this different kind of whiplash, right? Where like it was this nice thing that like happened to me, but then I basically like emailed her back and said, thanks, this is so nice, but I'm not really available to do that right now because I'm teaching another class and I'm finding that hard to keep up with. And so it was that high of being asked, followed by that low of like, which was a good low because it was like maintaining my like homeostasis, like saying, no, I can't do that right now. That's just to say the whiplash can come in different forms. It could be like the world doesn't give you the reaction you're hoping for, or it can be an opportunity that's presented to you that you don't want or you can't do. It's different circumstance, but kind of the same feelings that happen around it.
Yeah, that's interesting. And it does make me think of one example for me as well. I was invited to teach an art retreat in Portugal, which was not on my bingo card. I mean, maybe in LA, like I don't need to go all the way to Portugal to like teach an art retreat, but I really entertained the idea. And in the end, we decided not now, in part because the window is a little bit short. So we are in May. No, we are in June. And the retreat would have been mid October. And there was some concern about the
Mm,
timing and also just the current climate of the state of the world and the economy.
yeah.
It was kind of a big ask to get people to commit to something like that on such short notice. So, I mean, I was like, the high of like being asked for something so crazy to me and deciding yes I want to do it, but then also in the end it being no,
Mm-hmm.
which is sort of a relief. And I think that the
Yeah.
opportunity will still come up for next year, so that's fine. And even if it doesn't, it's fine. But yeah, the idea of saying no to opportunities is also kind of a big, because it's like you just got asked to do something and so you feel like you need to say yes. It's also like a little bit of a scarcity mindset where if I
Mm-hmm.
say no, am I going to get this opportunity again? And again, our whole lens when we do these podcast episodes is that we work full-time jobs. So everything is kind of filtered through the idea that we have less time to work on this business. So when you get these opportunities, you want to be able to say yes, but you have to really evaluate, is this even something I can do? And like for you, the idea of like driving up to Northern California, certainly there are other shops around here where you could do the same thing. So
Yeah.
it's like, can you make these opportunities even, easier on the
Mm-hmm.
time that we have? So yeah,
Yeah. And I
that's a good
think,
one.
you know, you mentioning that like our lens is always that we have these full-time jobs. And I think that makes you have to be even more choosy, right? About what you decide to do and not to do because we already have, like, if this is how much time you have in a normal day, like, we lose like over half of it. And
Mm-hmm.
then it's like, well, do I want to, if I only have, let's say 2 hours a day, do I want to give somebody half of that so that I can teach this class? And sometimes the answer might be, hell yeah, absolutely. And sometimes you might just be like, no, you know what? I have all these other things that I want to do that were my plans for my business. And that taking that on would just derail everything
Yeah.
or make me crazy. And so, you know, it's something to think about, like, especially if you're working in the margins, like to really be able to, you know, get excited about that high and then like come down to earth and be realistic about your answer.
Well, I would say in any moment where you're experiencing the high of the whiplash, definitely take time to celebrate that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because those are sort of like the little nuggets that keep us going.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe with the lows, you feel those as well, but try not to dwell on them and just know that it is part of what we do. It's just part of the process. And I mean, I know that like keep going is kind of one of my, it's not my thing. I mean, it's a thing out there, but like I do say it, keep going a lot, because really the only failure is stopping. And failure's not bad. It's just, it's a
Mm-hmm.
decision to stop or keep going. And when you're in one of these whiplash moments, they're also like an opportunity to reflect. And I think, that's really important and it helps you make smarter decisions going forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think those mindset shifts are really helpful for this. I also think kind of creating a buffer zone around yourself to like, I don't want to say you're like, it's not armor, right? It's like,
Yeah.
but it's like, your little like, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm trying to think of like, this is like, during the pandemic when there were all those crazy things people were doing, putting themselves in bubbles and like, people were just, they were doing their best, man. I get it.
We're all doing
But
our best. Yeah. Out
we're
here,
doing our best, but like
out here in the world.
having, yes, having like kind of layers around you to make those almost like bubble wrapping yourself, right? So that when you have that low and you crash down, the bubble wrap at least like makes the crash a little bit less painful, you know? And so, and that can be, having a friend that you talk to about these issues, that can be stepping away from your art business altogether for, even if it's a couple hours or a couple days, your business is not going to fold in
No,
that amount of time,
no.
but your mental health is going to, recuperate a little bit. So having those moments to step away, to reflect, or to have somebody reflect back to you what they're hearing, all of those things create that buffer zone that kind of help you to get through those moments.
Exactly. Yeah. I love the idea of the buffer. For me, it's usually taking a walk, going to a yoga class, calling a friend, taking a nap with Coco. I mean,
Yeah.
really.
Mm-hmm.
I think another important aspect would be to know that the output that you create is not a reflection of you personally. So, number one, especially if you're making art with limited time, not everything you make is going to be a masterpiece, and just accept that. When you see these beautiful sketchbook flip throughs where every page is a masterpiece, I can assure you that that person has another ugly sketchbook somewhere else, okay?
Mm-hmm.
The point being, don't attach your self-worth to the output or the reception of your work. They're two totally separate things. It is not a reflection of you personally. So accept the lows as information and don't let it like define who you are, right?
Yeah.
That's what I
And
would say.
even, there's that thought that you have to be making what people are receptive to, but also, which can lead some people to like constantly be trying something new, something new, something new, something new. But also, like, sometimes if you like you, I think of you, Stacie, and the fruit, like it's something that you enjoy painting and drawing, and you just keep doing it. And it doesn't have to be for other people, right? You enjoy it. And so you keep doing it.
Yeah.
And eventually, maybe somebody will be like, you know, that girl that's always painting the fruit, you know, like I really like her work. And, you know, and maybe that doesn't happen, but it doesn't matter because you are like making yourself happy and satisfied in the work. And I don't know, this is probably naive, but like we all got into this because we enjoy the process, right? And
Hmm.
so it's the thing, I've said it like many times on this podcast that Catherine is always asking me, are you having fun? And if I say no, then it's like, well, maybe I shouldn't be doing this particular thing, like not the whole thing, but
Yeah.
this part.
Yeah. Yeah. That's something, side note, that I think you and I have been talking about in our weekly meetings as we kind of come together to do our co-working. We have a lot of questions about, how is it worth it? And I think it is part of this whiplash as well, because we're feeling these highs and lows and we might be feeling like we're not making any progress. Is it worth it? So I have been like doing some journaling around, what is it about this that makes me happy, or what would I be doing if no one was watching? And I don't mean dance as if
Mm-hmm.
no one's watching. I just mean like, what would I be doing? Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I think another thing that can also help, if when you're experiencing these like highs and lows, is just to pay attention to like your creative energy. And when your creative energy is high, go with it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
create, make, do whatever it is. Maybe you get your kicks from creating spreadsheets to help understand your numbers. That's fine too. That is creative as well. Like, when you're feeling that creative moment, go with it. But also know that like, you can't just be sitting around waiting for inspiration. Like, you have to still do the
Yeah.
work. You have no business if you're not making work. If that is your idea of the business, is to make work, you need to make
Mm-hmm.
it. So batch your work when you can. So if you're feeling
Yeah.
creative and your energy is high, make as much as you can in the time that you're allotted. Switch gears, go for a walk, listen to a podcast, take a nap with your cat, and then switch gears into something else. And I think that will also help just sort of
Yeah.
manage the emotional highs and lows.
Yeah. It's like seize the opportunity, right? If
Yeah.
you're feeling inspired,
Yeah.
keep going until you're tired or until somebody's like, we're ready for dinner now. Like, let's go.
Yeah. And I think, like in the end, again, I feel like this topic probably resonates with a lot of artists. And it's really just understanding that it's not something that is necessarily going to go away. You'll probably always have highs and lows in your business. The hope would be that they're not as drastic, as you begin to understand that it's just part of the process and that you can kind of manage as they come up. And I think being aware of them is, I mean, they always say
Mhm.
awareness is the first step. I think being aware is truly like knowing that, oh, okay, this is happening and this is just part of it. And I'm in this phase right now, whether that's high or low. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. Um, it's almost like you have to like acclimate yourself. This is going to sound a little bit pessimistic, but like you should expect there to be a low because
Yeah.
there will be. Like that's just reality.
Yeah.
And so if you're kind of mentally prepared for that to happen, you don't know when, you don't know how, you don't know how low, but if you have your kind of steps in place to help keep you moving and to, you know, heal your ego or your heart or whatever is hurting, then that's really what you need. You just need to have the tools in place so that when you need them, they're there and you can rely on them.
Yeah. And I think one important thing to remember too is that we experience or we feel these highs and lows because we care so much.
Hmm.
So, if nothing else, like that's something to hold on to. Like you feel it because you care so much. And that's so sweet. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. We're just
Well,
out
and
here
we
trying to
want
do
that,
our
right? We
best.
want to, yeah, we want to care about our work because, oh, there's this quote that one of my colleagues has in their office. I don't know who said it, and I'm going to butcher it. I'm just going to start there. But basically, it's like, when the people who are the most excited and passionate, when those voices go quiet,
Mm.
then that's when like, it's like when people have these jobs that they just keep going to and they don't enjoy. It's just like part of their day, like they're just getting through it. Um, we're trying to build our own businesses that will hopefully never feel like that. That will never feel, you know, to the point where we're silenced by our own job. Um, and I think, this is one of the things we need to do to like make sure that we stay excited, that we stay, creatively invigorated, is to just be prepared to make sure that we can, make it through those times that might feel harder than others.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you are listening, if you've made it this far, maybe you'd like to share in the comments one thing that you did, maybe when you experienced this sort of whiplash of emotion as a creative, one thing that you did to help yourself move forward. Because I think we can learn from each other, and knowing how other people handle these situations can also just help us when we find ourselves there, which we probably will at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for listening to Art After Dark. If you connected with today's episode, we'd love for you to subscribe and share it with a friend who's on their own creative quest. And if you want to follow along with our work, you'll find all the links in the show notes. Until next time, keep creating, and we'll see you after dark.